get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Tara-Nicholle Kirke of SoulTour.com, and I'm going to formally introduce Tara in a second, but Tara, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. And really the theme of this, your journey is pretty incredible and diverse, I guess you could say. And it's really about, we were talking before we hit record about having what you do be congruent with who you are. And so other past episodes, I guess I hit on some of the health and longevity series that I did on Inspired Insider. I did one with Dr. Kristen Oha of Stat Wellness, and just, they live, some of these people live wellness, and that's what they decide to do. And they follow what they love and make a business out of it, make a great living and help people in the same respect. So check out the Dr. Kristen one. And there's just many more of different founders and episodes on there. Now check it out on Inspired Insider. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect their Dream 100 relationships. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. We are an easy button for your business to launch and run your podcast. And, Tara, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies I most admire and profile what they're working on. So if you've thought about starting a podcast, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com and learn more. And I'm excited. Tara-Nicholle Kirke, she's a globally recognized author, transformation expert, and spiritual strategist. Don't let the word spiritual fool you in this conversation. Don't check out. He's like, that's too woo-woo for me, because her journey and her background is pretty amazing. And we're going to find out how she got to this SoulTour business. And she's a founder of SoulTour. She's taught over 50,000 people how to stop hiding their light with her self-mastery method and toolkit. She helps ambitious people reach their potential and start living their big dreams. And she does that by helping them undo self-sabotage patterns. And she wrote the book, Transformational Business, on transformational business, called The Transformational Consumer. It's one of my favorite sub-headlines, Tara, and I want to do it justice. It's fuel a lifelong love affair with your customers by helping them get healthier, wealthier, and wiser. And she's been featured in Forbes, Harvard Business Review, New York Times. And I was saying, we're going to dig into her experience. It ranges from getting her law degree from Berkeley to working at Lightspeed Venture Partners to VP of Marketing at MyFitnessPal, which grew from 45 million to 100 million customers in her tenure. And then it was acquired by Under Armour for $475 million. And she worked at Under Armour as well. Tara, thanks for joining me.
I am so delighted to be here, Jeremy. Thank you.
Let's go back to just like mapping out your journey a bit. Why law? Why Berkeley? What made you, when you were in college and high school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a professor. And it's funny that now the way we think about and talk about SoulTour is that SoulTour is a school of self-mastery. So ultimately, I hear, for many of my clients, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm their spiritual teacher, but I often hear people describe me as their teacher.
Non-traditional route to professor.
I hear their children, my clients' children, say, "Oh, Tara's our teacher." And I'm like, okay, that's great. So yeah, I thought I would be a professor. I had this really funny way that the law thing happened. I thought I have a master's degree in psychology, thought I was going to go get a PhD in psychology and be a professor. But the summer before my master's degree, I actually did this weird, wonderful internship at the FBI Academy in Virginia. And I met a bunch of people there who had law degrees and were doing really unusual things with them. And at the time I had a couple little kids. I was about to be a single mom, and I was like, I could either go to law school for 3 years or I could do a PhD for 5. So I had this, a bunch of miracles happened, and I got into UC Berkeley, and they actually paid for me to come here and move my kids and all of that. And I still live down the street from school. I graduated from UC Berkeley Law 21 years ago, and I still live down the street.
You said a couple things I want to touch on. You said FBI Academy in single mother. Talk about the FBI Academy. What did you learn there?
I was reminded there versus like learned it for the first time. I was reminded of possibility and just like creative possibilities. There were, if you could master the way that you thought more than the subject matter of a discipline, lots of doors would open. And that's kind of what I saw. I've never really been one that personally struggled a ton with imposter syndrome. I really was flagged early in life as like kind of a gifted child and came up like that through school. But I grew up in a small town, and there was a moment when I started to leave my town, and the FBI Academy was the first of those experiences where it was the first time I ever really felt what I think people talk about as imposter syndrome, where I was like, oh my gosh, what if just everyone in my town thinks I'm smart? What if I go there and I'm not really? And so there I started to learn that I could actually like hang with the big intellectual dogs, so to speak. And that, there were many worlds and many lives that were available to you using your gifts and talents.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Bakersfield, California. So third generation Californian, but I grew up in the Central Valley in this very, actually very non-California style town. It's very red, red state, very conservative, very religious upbringing.
The single mother stuck out because, school, life, work is hard enough, right? Now you add a child to it. I really don't know how people do it. Yeah, two. How many kids did you have at the time, and how did you?
Back then, I had two. I've got three children. Today, I have three children. You want a real doozy. They are 29 years old, 30 years old, and 5 years old. Okay. The 29-year-old is my biological child. The other two are adopted. So at the time I had the now 29-year-old and now 30-year-old, they're half brothers biologically. But I was like, I don't know. I was 16 when I started college. I was 16 and 6 months pregnant when I started college. But that kind of just shows you the paradox. My whole life has been my whole journey has been a journey of bringing together seemingly paradoxical things. So like in one person, in my own being, I was this combination of like teen mom marrying the guy from the wrong side of the tracks, and super excellent high school student who got all these scholarships and was able to graduate early and start college early. And I just cannot underestimate the number of people who were pivotal. I call them pivot people now. People, and just, I say miracles. They happen so much that they're not really that, miraculous, I guess, in the conventional sense. But there was like a local law firm in my hometown that agreed to just pay for my college. So there were people who agreed to pay for me to go to law school. There were all these and it's part of what trained me early to understand that there were forces that were bigger than me that could support my success, and that it didn't have to be a religious or spooky or weird thing for me to align with and awaken to and receive that assistance. It didn't have to be associated with someone else's idea of, whatever, God or church or whatever. It could actually just be whatever it needed to be from me. And that has truly changed my life. And it changes my clients' lives now.
Tara, talk about, you don't have to talk specific people if you don't want to, but I'm wondering, what were some of those pivotal things? And you mentioned, how did the law firm, how did that happen?
Bizarrely, it was all like natural next steps lighting up in front of me. I realized I was pregnant when I was in my junior year of high school, and I was friendly with my principal. So I went to see her and was like, hey, what am I supposed to do about this? So what do you think I should do? And so she kind of sat me down and she was like, you can graduate anytime. So I had been taking, because I was bored out of my mind, I had been taking night classes at the junior college just to not like eat my face off with boredom. And I'd taken all the AP classes and done all the things that the school had. And I was taking night classes at the college. And she was like, you've already had enough credits to graduate. Like, consider yourself graduated. And she picked up the phone and she called the local university and she started making calls. And it turned out that they had this like, Bakersfield is a town that actually has a great amount of genius in it, but it tends to flee. It tends to leave. So they had begun to put together a scholarship program that was just getting started where local businesses who wanted to help keep the brain drain from happening, frankly, would support those great students if they would just stay in town. And so I'm the only person I've ever met in my life, Jeremy, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in psychology, a law degree from UC Berkeley, and I never took the SAT. I didn't have to she just was like, okay, you're officially in, it's paid for. It was like phone calls. It was wild. And not only did they pay, they assigned me this mentor who was a professor at the university who had also been a very young mother, who was also I have since endowed a scholarship in her name. She passed away a few years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was that was awful. But she was very, like, the day I met her, I was I'm like a Black teenager, super pregnant, showing up, being like, hi, here. I mean, I'm sure it was kind of wild. And we had one conversation and she started to say things like, mind you, I'm 16. I haven't even started college yet. She started to say things like, I can tell from this conversation that you're going to need to go to grad school. Okay, she's talking about grad school. My parents are like freaking out, hoping I don't blow all the cash they've spent on private school, right? They're just hoping I get through college. She starts talking to me about grad school before I even come into college. She is like, in her mind, weaving together this like plan, this roadmap for me of like what research assistantships she can get me into, what like professors I should be working for, what publications I should get into, what conferences I should go to. And I'm 16 and pregnant. And so that was the level of, and I do tell people, a lot of the big name schools are beautiful especially for grad school. But when you're an undergrad, there is a level of support you can get from some of these local colleges and universities that's like bananas. These professors just cared a lot. And they, so they started both speaking enlarged possibilities to me, and actually like doing the things that I would not have known to do, putting me, in the rooms that I wouldn't have known to try to get into. That did change the course of my life.
When you talk about that, Tara, I think, one of those things, having a child, going to college, what creeps into my mind is, how am I going to do this? Like separately. And you're doing this together, right? What was the conversation like with your parents?
Not fun. It was not great. My parents actually cut me off for a while.
Oh.
And I was like, yo, really? Because I've got kids and I really thought I was doing the great work. Like I'm still staying in school and doing all this stuff. They were really not thrilled. They super cut me off. It was very painful. It took a lot of years to kind of reconcile. And I was this is the children are 29 and 30. Those children are 29 and 30 now. So it's been some years. I was having a conversation with my dad the other day, and he was sort of going through, people get reflective as they age. And he was thinking through the generations of our family. And he was pointing out that in my generation of our family, the couple of cousins who have done really well were the ones who got cut off right after high school. And everybody else, because my family was pretty upwardly mobile. Like we were definitely an upper middle class Black family, or becoming that when I was a child. My father is a real estate investor. There, I have a bunch of cousins who struggled, who kept getting checks written to them. So my dad was like reflecting, and I thought he was going to be like, I'm so sorry I put you through that. Instead, he was like, I really did you a big favor tonight. He was like, good for me.
Oh, wow.
Like, I don't know if I agree with all that, but you can't deny that anytime there's Jeremy, have you heard of cryotherapy?
For sure. Yeah.
Right? Okay,
Of
so I'm
course.
doing cryotherapy right now.
I had Wim Hof on the podcast. I don't know if you've heard
Oh
of
my
Wim
God.
Hof, but it was like almost a 2-hour interview. And it sounds like you know who he is. So
Yeah.
I have followed some Wim Hof methods and taken his courses and done cold exposure. So
They'll get you right. I
Yeah.
just like 2 days ago, I had a negative 220-degree session, 3-minute session. That's Fahrenheit, guys, really. But the thing about cryotherapy, right, is it's such a shock to your system that your system has to marshal and harness and draw on resources it might not otherwise in your comfortable suburban beautiful life. And that is a lot what getting cut off by my parents and just taking on all these things at a time was, I think it built a resilience in me that is I count on among, probably my best qualities now. And I think that was when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I'm 47 now. And I've realized that I don't always have to do things the hardest possible way. I don't always have to pile my karma plate up at the karma buffet 15 times, more than somebody else might. Sometimes change can and needs to be rip the Band-Aid fast, and sometimes it needs to be slow. And slow can be, I don't know if you've heard the saying, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Sometimes slow change is actually the fastest change because it's the change that sticks and doesn't make you want to like poke your eyes out along the way.
Yeah, you've built this tremendous resiliency, and you've probably gotten used to doing hard things. What else do you do? So the cryotherapy is one, and now, maybe it fills that gap in like a productive way that doesn't make you go down a crazy path of a lot of hours or work or whatever it is. What are some other things you do to fill that resiliency, doing the hard things?
Well, so I mean, my life tends to present me with opportunities. I do now have a 5-year-old, right? And she was my biological granddaughter who I adopted. So I was not like out on a mission to have a kid. I got a wonderful opportunity to adopt the best human who has ever been made yet, and I did. But yeah, I still am big on big dreams. I still have this, like, I don't do play small. It's not me. There's always an edge in my work, in my writing, with the baby. She's not a baby anymore, she told me the other day, but with London. So right now, one of the edges I'm playing with is we're actually in the process of moving from California, where I've been my whole life and for several generations, to Portugal. Because I have this vision for her based on what I know about her and her unique wiring and her unique design, what I know about my own big dreams, that is really just not available here, right? And so I'm big on, like, I lead with vision and like what it is that I want to create in my life, almost more than my business first, and why I want to create it and how I want to feel as I create it, because most of life is in the creating. It's not the after you check the box. And then I am very flexible with, and I invite spirit, because I am actually woo, to show me the how, to light up the natural next steps to the how. So right now, the move to Portugal is a big project I'm working on. And then I always have projects in the business and in my clients' businesses that we're working on.
You've been faced, there's a lot of decisions throughout. It seems like, There aren't easy decisions to make. Looking back, maybe they're obvious looking back, but at the time, and seems like the decision to adopt. What was that like?
Wild. That experience was wild. The actual decision was felt like no decision at all. Felt like the only possible thing to do. But everything else about that experience was wild. I was literally sitting on a deck, eating fries and drinking champagne, because that's what I do on Fridays. Or that's what I used to do on Fridays. Let's be clear. And got a phone call that was like, I remember sitting across and looking at my friend as I was on the phone being like, what happened? Wait, what? I have to go pick up this baby who I don't know. I've met her. She was 17 months old at the time, and I had met her twice. And just, the people who were supposed to be taking care of her, their shit hit the fan. It's the only way to say it. And I literally went over, got my friend I was sitting with, had her kid's old car seat in her garage. She said, drive to my house. She buckled it into my car. I went and picked this baby up, and she has been with me since then, 3.5 years ago. And it was like a year before the pandemic. So I spent a year in court getting guardianship of her. Then we were deep in the pandemic. Then I spent a year adopting her. I broke up with my partner in the process. Like, there was this whole wild life transformation. My whole business had to change around it. I spent Jeremy, this is the biggest thing I've ever done. I spent 21 days in a room by myself with a 2-year-old in the pandemic. Like, you think all that other stuff was hard? That was.
I think there's Jim Gaffigan bit talking about the pandemic with kids. It's really funny, but he's like, you haven't survived the pandemic if you hadn't had like young kids in there with you, obviously speaking like everyone's healthy, like no one's getting sick, but it's hilarious the way he describes it. Yeah.
It's the whole thing. And I love it. I think I can I knew immediately I would do it. And so then for me, every kind of big decision like that becomes a process of like anything you would label as crisis in whatever way. I'm always reminded that the traditional Greek original meaning of crisis was turning point. Every so-called crisis is in my world, in my mind and my life, is literally an opportunity to take a look at what story you've been living and see where you might want to disrupt it. Like, great, this is your shot. So I'm constantly asking myself, what wonderful thing is coming to me through this? And sometimes it's wonderful as in, oh my gosh, I literally got like the best human being to raise. She's a damn delight. We are having a wonderful time. And it's a challenging time, but a wonderful time. And sometimes it's a wonderful thing as in like a not so blissful, not so joyful, happy, but like a clarity that you needed to have or something you needed to see about yourself or say to yourself or, to me, the gift of one of the gifts of the pandemic, the best compliment I ever received was an author friend of mine telling me that I let nothing be wasted on me. And I think that sums me up. I seek to not let anything be wasted on me. And I think in the pandemic, most of us, I'll just say it this way. Some of the good ones didn't make it. I for sure know people who I am shocked and stunned are no longer on this planet who were a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And so if, I don't believe in the cultural story of like time scarcity, you're falling behind, life is short, hurry up, blah, check the boxes. But you're not paying attention if you don't see that you're not here forever. You know what I'm saying? So like, if there are things that you desire to do now or ways that you desire to be now, or dreams that you desire to fulfill now, or potentials you desire to fulfill now, if you're not doing it now, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And that's I seek to kind of live like that.
I mean, that's, kind of talking about the SoulTour, which I want to get to, and some of the work you do there. And I want to talk about Deepa for a minute. But before we get there, talk about MyFitnessPal, and when you think of your time there.
Yeah.
What story sticks out to you from the MyFitnessPal days with tremendous growth, getting acquired? I mean, there's so much that happened.
MyFitnessPal was really such a beautiful time. And it was also such a beautiful case study with me as the case study for myself. Up until MyFitnessPal, I was always, and including at MyFitnessPal, I was always like, I wanted to be this I knew I was called to be transformational in people's lives. And I thought the way to do that was to do market to them through the lens of goals that they have, and then slip in all this other wonderful material. Like head fake them, and they want to lose weight. So we'll do that and we'll help you lose weight. But then I'm going to slip in all this messaging in the blog about how radically worthy of love you are and acceptance you are, like that.
Give them what they want, but what they need, type of thing.
Yeah, totally. Slip them, yeah. And MyFitnessPal at the very beginning and at the very end was this experience for me of learning to be in alignment with who I am, not in alignment with the perform, conform, produce culture or the way that we are taught to be executives in this world. So before MyFitnessPal, I'd had this process and experience of a few years of really coming to practice what I now call self-mastery, like waking up from some of my own self-sabotage, my own self-silencing patterns, creating and just writing. If I had a thing I wanted to write about or speak about, I would just write it and put it out somewhere with no worry about where it was going to land or if the book would sell or whatever. And that's actually how I got the MyFitnessPal job in the first place. I had written an article in Forbes that was basically the precursor to the Transformational Consumer. Someone from, I ended up being had outreach from other publications about that. Was apparently becoming known in venture capital circles as the woman who does this transformational kind of marketing. So when MyFitnessPal was 8 years old, they had 45 million customers. They had never had a marketing team and they had never taken investment money at that stage, which is wild. And when they decided to take a first round of investment, they were talking to all the heavy hitting VC funds and they were like, you need a marketing team, one, and you need to talk to Tara. And so they called me asking literally the brief was, should we have a marketing team? And I was like, I don't know the answer to that question because honestly, 45 million customers with no marketing team is pretty badass. So, but what I can do is get to know you, get to know the business, get to know the roadmap and tell you whether I think there's something marketing could do for you, maybe come up with a creative way marketing can help further the business goals. So I came on as a consultant actually. And for 6 months, I just sat with a CEO and helped him articulate. Helped articulate vision and mission and do some hiring of leaders and create. I had a thought that MyFitnessPal was doing great on growth because of what it was and how well optimized it was by his work. But engagement, it needed some help with. And it was going to need some help on growth in other countries as we expanded into other languages and measurement metric systems. And I thought, gosh, with 45 million customers already, this company, if it had a badass content program, could be the largest health and fitness media property in the world fast. And we could use that to drive engagement to the app, which every health app will tell you, you can get users in the first place, but getting them to come back and engage on the app is another whole challenge. So that's what we did. And I like made the business case for it, started to do little, proof of concepts. It started to really work. I hired the whole marketing team and I was still a consultant. And every month the CEO would give me a job offer and I'd be like, nope, 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 sorry, nope. And finally the sixth time he gave me the job offer, well, two things happened. I had just had a conversation with my dad where my dad was like, you need to come up. I was like, they can't pay me enough. Like, I'm a consultant. I'm doing really well here financially. I get to work at home with my dogs. This is before the pandemic and everybody worked at home. And my dad was like, you need to decide what number would make you say yes. And I decided a number. And like the next week, I had a meeting with the CEO where he did two things. He offered me that exact number without knowing.
You talked to your dad.
He probably did.
No, I'm just...
It was like half the money I was making. It was literally 50% of what I was making. But I knew that MyFitnessPal would have like a 2-year run to exit, and I would do well on the exit. And the other thing he did was this, and it's important. He said, I need to have you in the leadership room at MyFitnessPal. And I need that because I know that you will tell me the truth. You're like my go-to strategic truth teller. And because I had been working for so many years on like unlocking my voice and being truth teller in a strategic way, but unfettered way, the fact that he specifically recognized the value of the single thing that was my own personal growth, like priority, was like a very good fit for us. So he made the invitation, I accepted the invitation, and we had this amazing 2-year run. And then at the end of that 2-year run, we were acquired by Under Armour. I haven't told this story a ton, and I won't make it long, but
there's no such thing as long, it's just boring. So no such thing as long time is boring. So exactly. So make it as long as you need.
That it's not. Well, so, mergers and acquisitions, they're a thing. And in the Valley, it's really pretty normal for people to, merge companies and like leave. But MyFitnessPal itself was so awesome. It was like, I kept thinking about that Good to Great. Remember that book?
Jim Collins, yeah.
Yeah, the Jim Collins book, which is a great book. But he talks in there about like a couple of different models of companies. Like one is like, there's one genius to like 1,000 workers. And the other is like, everybody's kind of egalitarian workers. And I'm like, including the CEO. And I kept thinking, you know what MyFitnessPal is? It's the flip of that. It's if everybody was a genius. Like the CEO's a genius, all the C-suite's genius, all the workers are genius. And everybody just gets to like work in their zone of genius all the time. It was freaking awesome. We had a great time together. I mean, people had a hard time finding jobs afterwards because they were just like, I can't work in this. Like the state of the workplace was like real not great compared to MyFitnessPal. So once we were acquired, to me, it was clear that I was going to be very redundant because Under Armour had bought all of these companies like MyFitnessPal at the same time. And all of them had like marketers at kind of my level, and Under Armour already had someone doing like what I did basically. But I was given an offer. For a lot of money to stay around as the word figurehead was thrown out there so that my team wouldn't leave, or so that they wouldn't leave immediately. And I was like, I love some of you very much, and I'm going to Croatia to ride my bike now. So I actually it was the first of several times rapid fire that I turned down, like in the 7 figures of money, for that same level of alignment that I had originally taken the job offer for at MyFitnessPal. So that's why my decisions are easy in life. The path around them ain't easy, but the decisions are easy because the decisions are either in alignment with who I am and why I'm here, or it's not. It either feels shackles on, constricted, I'm trying to make a thing happen, perform, conform, produce, or it's shackles off. And that I know in the moment. And I don't think everyone's decision-making process is exactly that, but for many people, shackles on, shackles off, how does it feel, will put you in some real right decisions in your life. And even though they may feel like you've lost something at first. Right.
I want to get to the SoulTour, but I do want to encourage people to check out the book, The Transformational Consumer, and stories there.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we have limited time, so I'm gonna gloss over that because I want to get to SoulTour. But talk about Deepa.
Let's talk about Deepa. Deepa is one of my clients. Her name is Deepa Purushothaman. I say her whole name because she has an awesome book out right now.
What's the book?
So the book is called, I actually have it right here. It's called The First, the Few, and the Only. And I want to get the subtitle right. So I'm going to read it. How Women of Color Can Redefine Power in Corporate America is her book.
Awesome.
So Deepa is she's kind of a case study for like a somewhat common fact pattern in my clients. I am blessed in that I kind of only work with people who are already smart and successful, and often unfulfilled. Often they present with like, I'm doing really great in my job. I have a big job at a big company. Deepa was an SVP at Deloitte. A lot of times they're having some kind of gateway experience. She was very physically ill. She was in a toxic work environment and she was pretty chronically physically ill. That's not uncommon. It's also not uncommon for people to just be like, gosh, I'm 40, I'm 50 now. Like, is this it? There's gotta be more out there than this. You know what I'm saying? And so they know that they've always had some kind of a calling for greatness. They've always known that they don't feel like they've yet fulfilled their potential or their dreams or both. And so it's interesting because I kind of end up being the business coach, the book, the brand, the business coach and strategist to people like that. And it always starts with the spiritual part of spiritual strategy. Right. So yes, there are very practical things I do to help people distill their frameworks and create either a brand book or a growth book, or figure out what their brand platform should be, how they're going to reach and engage people, figure out what the engine of profit for them and transformation for their clients would be in their business. I call that an empire of the soul. So we have a number of programs where we help people create that. But all of the work always starts with daily ritual. It starts with, taking a sacred pause from your life and your everyday to stop reacting and tap back into your natural strengths and powers. I think of this through the lens of what I call the self-mastery method, which is really 3 steps: recalibrate first, then actualize, then align, and over again. So when you recalibrate, what you're doing is shifting your paradigms, recalibrating your nervous system. You know what I'm saying? So like for Deepa, daily, it's funny because it's to me one of the simplest things, but the daily ritual was like very, very powerful. It's guided. There's a process to it. It works neurobiologically, psychologically, and spiritually. And in the process of this specific ritual, people download clarity on what's next for their lives, right? And then once they do that and start to come out from under some of the fear and scarcity and unworthiness and even trauma that many people are, carrying along with them in this life, they start to get really curious about who they really are. Like they start to get really into the self-discovery systems, whether it's Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, StrengthsFinder, Kolbe. I teach the Sacred Money Archetypes, which is a Jungian system. And I teach human design, the quantum human design system. So people start to understand their own wiring and strengths and shadows. And once you get a detailed level of understanding of that, you can set new vision and dreams and goals for your life that are not the cultural ones. And then alignment or taking inspired action on those dreams and goals becomes wildly easier and more rewarding because you don't have that level of inner resistance that you do when you're setting goals under the influence of your inner critic or fear or cultural conditioning or whatever. So We have a bunch of programs at SoulTour. Deepa did a bunch of programs. I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
Which
I love
ones.
to talk about the programs, when you said the umpires of the soul, what are the type of programs? I know people can go to soultour.com to learn more, check out more, but if you get an overview of the type of programs, what does that look like?
We have a number of programs for with different entry levels for different people. So we have a program called Do Your Dream, which I like to secretly call just do the damn thing. But it's like a 21-day anti-procrastination program in a really spacious countercultural way, non-hustle grind way. And people find themselves taking wild action, building incredible momentum on a project that has been like, either it can be a passion project, a work project, whatever, but I help them set the goal in a way that feels like they're giving them a gift and then get momentum on it and build daily ritual along the way. We have a program on the sacred money archetypes, which is a 6-week intensive program. People take it when they have, if they feel like they have money blocks or like an inner glass ceiling on their income, and they're not sure why. But I tell people it's really it's a shadow work program. The way you do money is the way you do everything. So if you find yourself it's kind of our entry-level program on self-sabotage in general. I have a more advanced self-sabotage program called the Inner Critic Cure. And then our flagship programs are called Empires of the Soul. We have 2 sort of levels of that program. It is like life mastery and self-mastery and money mastery and business mastery for people who are building the empires of their soul. And we have we have one section of that program is called Emerging Empires for people whose businesses are doing under $250K a year in revenue. And then we have the Empires Collective. That's for people who are at $250K or more in revenue. And it's mentorship, coaching, consulting, community. There's some curriculum. And the reality is that building the empire of your soul is not a blueprint checklist thing. It does not look the same for every person. So there's a lot of individualized, road mapping and support in those programs. And those particular empires programs, we have an application process for. So that's if you go to soultour.com/apply, you get the application, you get to talk to us about that.
So people can check out soultour.com/apply
for the business
for that. And then what's the best way to get in touch if, one piece of this is resonating with them? Where should they go?
They should go to, let's see, if you want to know whether we should work together, either soultour.com/apply or just drop a note to support@soultour.com and they'll put you in the right place. I do have this special set of affirmations that are kind of like my power ones that I'd love to offer your people. Can
Definitely.
I do that?
Oh, definitely. Okay. Go for it.
All right, great. So much of the way I like to, the rubric I like to use in talking about my work is that I get to help people be their big selves and do their big dreams before they die. And then I also get to help them dream a better dream. And most of the way we do that is by helping them overcome self-sabotage, which is rooted in fear, which takes the persona of your inner critic. That's kind of the voice of self-doubt and fear. So if you go to soultour.com/affirmations and you enter your email address there, a couple things will happen. One is I'll send you my Transformation Tuesday newsletter, and that I send a lesson out every single week that helps people reach their full potential, build their empires, live the lives they are born to live, all of that. But on that page, when you sign up, you'll also get a quick audio training. That's one of the hundreds of lessons I've given. It's one of the ones that people pay me to come give the most on how to breathe new life into old dreams. And you'll get a download that are like affirmations to befriend and transform your inner critic, not to slay or silence or mute or kill your inner critic, to be clear, to befriend and transform your inner critic, which is as a process of soothing your inner critic in a way that releases inner resistance and unlocks your power to create what you want to create. So that's just the best. It's the easiest way to get on my general email list too. We do live events. We do all kinds of other things. We open up programs and live challenges and activations all the time. So if you're on that, if you go to soultour.com/affirmations, you get on the list and you get all the invitations.
Tara, I have one last question before I ask it. I just want to thank you for sharing your journey, sharing your knowledge and wisdom. Everyone can go to SoulTour.com, check out SoulTour.com/affirmations to get that, what Tara just shared. What are some resources that you like? You mentioned, Jim Collins' book. We mentioned your book. What are some of the other resources that, or books that you've studied or like?
I love Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap. I'm sure you know that book. Let's see. I read a lot of Karen and human design. I read a lot of Karen Curry Parker, and she has a new book out that's very entry level into human design that I like and am recommending. It's called the Human Design Workbook. Let's see. I love the Four Agreements. I'm giving you like some of the classics.
Yeah. I love the Four Agreements. Yeah.
The Four Agreements to me is the shortest book that will change your entire life. Like, I went to Amazon to send somebody the link to the Four Agreements. You know how Amazon is like, you bought this book. It was like, you bought this book 22 times. Because I just send them. I'm like, you guys don't understand. This book is a game changer. Yeah.
I mean, I think about those things, the premises in the Four Agreements on a daily basis, especially don't take anything personally, specifically.
Like taking that, what a challenge, right? What an aspiration to take nothing personally. And to be impeccable with your word, which is interesting because the book is so deep for being so short. Be impeccable with your word doesn't just mean like, do what you say you'll do. It means understand that you have the power to speak life or death, energy or disconnect into anything. And so because of the people I work with they're just like the good ones. You know what I mean? They're like the good ones. And so they don't tend to be out here like slandering other people. They tend to slander their own dreams and goals, though. They will talk against them or against their own, just in doubting and wondering, when is it ever going to happen? Am I ever going to, whatever? They can create a really like actually low vibration on the subject of their own dreams. Yeah, those are some of my all-time favorite. Oh, what's a sleeper hit? I never hear anyone talk about this book, and it's so good. It's called Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. Because our culture is very anti-ending. So it's a really good, that book taught me boundaries. It taught me how to ascertain when I needed to make a necessary ending and what I needed to end. Like sometimes it's not the whole relationship with an employee, but it might be a pattern, right? And then gives you like tools for actually executing necessary endings. It's a really good book.
I love the sleepers. Tara, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out SoulTour.com, SoulTour.com/affirmations. Check it out and her book as well. Tara, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.